Hi, my name is Carole Baskin, and I am the founder and CEO of Big Cat Rescue, which is a sanctuary for more than 70 lions, tigers, leopards, cougars, bobcats, servals, ocelots, jungle cats, Joffrey cats, just about every kind of cat you can imagine. And it was all started by this beautiful cat, Windsong. Windsong is a bobcat that was being sold at an auction back in 1992. And I had done bobcat rehab and release since I was 17 years old. But in 92, when the man next to me at the auction started bidding on this bobcat, I told him, when that cat grows up, she is going to tear your face off because bobcats are just so ferocious. And he said, it doesn't matter, I'm a taxidermist, and I'm just going to club her in the head in the parking lot and make a den decoration out of her. I was horrified, brought Windsong home with me that day, and nothing has been the same since. So I tell people all the time, if you love animals, you may one day find yourself in a position where you do something that seems reckless at the time, but can turn out to be really something special. In her case, she was a horrible pet. I couldn't release her because she had been declawed by the former owner. And so we started looking around for a mate for her to play with. Not to breed, but just for her to have somebody to play with. And we got to Minnesota from a guy who was running an ad and said that we had to drive up there in person. When we got there, it turned out to be a fur farm. And there were 56 bobcats and lynx. And I asked him if there was that big of a market for them as pets, because there's no sign that says it's a fur farm. I had no idea what we were looking at. And he said, oh no, he said, once they get to be a year old, we'll just slaughter them for their fur. And so we came home with 56 bobcats and Canada lynx and Siberian lynx that day. And that was in 1993, and thus the beginning of what is now Big Cat Rescue in Tampa, Florida. So that's how we got started in this industry. I've learned a lot along the way, and what I've learned is that none of these cats belong in cages. So we are doing everything that we can to get a federal bill passed that would ban the private possession of these animals and would end the pay-to-play operations. There are many, mostly lions and tigers bred for the purpose of being used as photo props, or people will pay to come and pet them or walk with the lions or do all kinds of things that seem innocuous on their surface, but people don't realize that they have to pull the cubs away from their mothers right away, and they bottle raise them, which means they don't get the nutrition they need. They're used for about 12 weeks and then they can take a finger off, and so then they are often just given away to people as pets that don't have any idea what they're taking on. And when those cats get to be 200, 300 pounds at the end of a year, those people are trying to get rid of them as fast as they can. So it's a horrible situation, but our federal bill will get rid of 99.9% of the problems. There will still be big cats bred for life in zoos, which I'm not a fan of, but at least it won't be all of these backyard breeders and people that are dumping them into horrible situations. I see some emerging trends, and I'm very excited about them because I think that zoos have been historically the largest opponent. Zoos and circuses have been the largest opponent to our federal bill. Circuses have gone away now, thankfully, with Ringling collapsing, and we're so thrilled about that. But the zoos are still an issue because they are sometimes hundreds of years old, and they have been entrenched in the communities, and people use them to bring their kids there to provide babysitting services for the most part. And so they don't want to see that model go away. And so what we're hoping to do is to show them that we can create far better experiences with virtual reality and 360 video of cats in very native or their native environments, so that people get a feel for what it's really like to be that cat rather than seeing some languishing animal in a cage. And if we can do that on a small scale here at Big Cat Rescue, then we can set the stage and the model for zoos to emulate. they already have all of the infrastructure they need. They've got the buildings, they've got the restaurants, they've got the bathrooms, they've got all of the parking and everything that they would need to turn these into mini theaters. You know, you'd have your Asia theater and your African theater and your North American theater, and inside those theaters you would experience all of those animals living in the way that they would live in the wild. So I'm very excited to be spending time and energy on creating 360 videos with the cats that we have, and trying to learn more about computer generated images and getting involved in people that are doing that kind of work, because I think that's what our future is. The challenges that we face are that, you know, it's new technology, and getting people to adopt early is not something that a 200-year-old zoo is going to be keen to do unless they can see that it really is a viable and lucrative business model. And then once they see that, I think they will see that those benefits far outweigh keeping live animals in cages, because none of us who have wild animals in cages could possibly believe that that's a good life for them. In the case of tigers alone, they roam 400 square miles. What kind of cage is ever going to be sufficient for a cat like that? So I think that it'll be slow going, but I think it will happen, and we're going to do everything that we can to make that happen. I think the key initiatives for making this a reality, where big cats are no longer kept in cages, but rather are experienced in these virtual theaters, is going to take us using the technology that's currently available, showing people how amazing that can be, and really push that leading edge to get other sanctuaries and other people who agree that animals don't belong in cages to adopt those technologies, so that those technologies grow and thrive and more great minds come into that space. And as more great minds come into that and can create a product that's better and better and better, then that's going to compete with theaters and all kinds of things. So this could be just a really huge opportunity for a lot of people to make a lot of money, and the great side benefit is that no animals have to suffer as a result. The most difficult time that I've had in all of the years of rescuing big cats, and we've rescued over 200 exotic cats, like I mentioned the species earlier. We've also rescued over 600 domestic cats and kittens. We have a foster program that we work with the Humane Society of Tampa Bay, and so that's a great fun part of what we do, because we can touch those cats. The domestic cats and kittens need to be socialized for their new homes, and so we spend a lot of time playing with them and teaching them not to bite and teaching them to use a litter box and all of those kinds of things so that they can be adopted. We never touch the big cats here, the exotic cats, because that sends the wrong message. They're not pets and we shouldn't handle them. But the most awful part of our history was 9/11 in 2001. When that happened, in addition to all of the human tragedies involved in that, tourism stopped. Donations to animal causes stopped. And in order to take care of the cats that we had at the time, we were spending somewhere to the tune of like $3 million a year, and a huge portion of that was donations, and the rest of it was people visiting. So there was no money coming in, and yet those cats still had to eat. And it took the economy, I'd say probably a year and a half or better, to recover from that impact, where people started giving to charities again. So during that period of time, I sold what little possessions I still had left to try and raise the money to make sure that the cats didn't starve in the process. And I was down to the last $20,000, which would only feed the cats for like a week or two, when I talked to some people about doing a SWOT analysis. And what they wanted me to do was, list out all of the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. And what I decided to do after listing all of that out is I would only focus on the strengths and opportunities. I would not think about the weaknesses or the threats. And by focusing all of my attention on what can we do right now to get more people to donate or more people to visit, and by doing that, we were able to push through that very, very difficult time and become the successful sanctuary that we are today. We currently have to raise about $4 million a year, but close to $1 million of that every year is set aside for things like projects to save animals in the wild where they belong, and to build the infrastructure of the sanctuary that we had been needing, like a new cat hospital and facilities for our volunteers. We don't pay anybody to work with the cats, so all of our animal care is done by volunteers. But that means they're here all day, so we have to provide a place for them to eat, to cool off, because we're in Florida and it's ridiculously hot. So all of those kinds of infrastructure projects have been raised with that extra money that we've been able to put aside each year. Most companies are looking for what their ideal customer or client is. In our case, the clients are the cats. And so the only difference is that we provide a service to the animals, but the people funding it are humans. And so we try to make every donor feel appreciated. In fact, we have one person on our team who is paid, and her entire purpose is to show appreciation. She's called our Director of Donor Appreciation. And by appreciating the people who are helping us, both the volunteers and the donors, then we are able to continue to grow that goodwill in the community and to provide for the animals in our care. Motivating volunteers has always been one of the biggest challenges, because the main reason that they are here is because they love animals and they want to take care of animals. So we have a partner track, which is administrative work, and a keeper track. So of course the keeper track attracts a lot of people who do great work for the cats. But the partner track is where all of that interfacing with the public is. So we give guided tours. We're not like a zoo, you can't just wander around. The guided tours require 2 tour guides. One person is leading the tour and telling you about the animals. The other tour guide is making sure everybody stays in a group, and we do groups of 1 to 25. There's not a whole lot of people who want to volunteer to be a tour guide, or to work in a gift shop, or to send out thank you notes, or to do any of those kinds of non-cat related things. So it's always been a bit of a challenge to figure out how to show appreciation for those people, because they are critical to our success. So some of the ways that we are implementing for that is a mentoring program and trying to get them out to the cat side of the fence. Of course, there's the people side where they come into the parking lot and the gift shop, and we can contain them there. But once they go onto the cat side, they have to have a volunteer who is leading the tour or backing the tour up. So for our volunteers who are not trained in all of the cat keeping aspects, then there has to be somebody who takes them out so that they get some time with the cats. And that's usually me. So I'm going to try and spend more time doing that. I think I've neglected that in the past, and I want to spend more time getting those people out there to meet the cats that they are supporting. I know there's a lot of agencies that are animal protection oriented who come here and they say, oh, it must be so wonderful to actually be around the kind of animal that you're saving, because in their world they never really get to see those animals in person. But I gotta tell you, it's sad to be on this side, because every time I look at those cats, I think they don't belong in cages. It's just wrong. They don't belong there. But I understand where they're coming from. So it's a nice reprieve for those who are doing work in legislative areas, or maybe in native lands for the animals, that they never get to see the animals, that they do get to come here. Career advice that I could offer to anyone who wants to be involved in animals is to launch a career that will give you a lot of money and a lot of free time. There's no money in taking care of animals. Like I said before, all of our animal care is done by our 130 plus volunteers and our 20 interns. So you're not going to be able to support yourself taking care of wild animals. But if you build a business like I did, a real estate business, that gives you enough of a cash flow and enough flexibility in your time to be able to do this kind of work, then you can really make a difference. Didn't really talk about it at the beginning of the talk here, but the way I got started in this is at the age of 18, I believe, or 19, I started investing in real estate in Florida. And it's a very lucrative business. It's a tough business. There's a lot of competition. And at the time, I was one of the few females doing it. In fact, I remember my first business card, my name was Stairs at the time, Carole Stairs. And so I created a business card that had the initial C and Stairs. And so whenever people would call the office, I would tell them that Mr. Stairs was not in right now, but I would take their message and I would get to him. And so I created this fictional male figure who was running this entire business so that people would do business with me. And it wasn't until years later when I got married that was really funny, because they met my husband, whose last name was Lewis, and they'd say, "Oh, you must be Mr. Stairs." So that was always kind of an inside joke for us, because of the fact that people were so unwilling to give a woman any credibility in that field. But now that's not a problem. Thankfully, women can do just about anything a man can do, and they don't have to hide behind a male name to do it. I was so convinced of that so convinced of the opposite back when I was having to go under the name of an assumed male, that when my daughter was born, I actually gave her the name of Jamie, which could be perceived either way, so that she'd never have to create a character. She could call herself by her name, and unless people met her in person, they wouldn't know the difference. The real estate business has been very good to me, and I work 7 days a week, but it gave me the opportunity to set aside money that when I saw this situation with this bobcat being sold at the auction, and when I saw the situation in the fur farm, the entrepreneur in me said, I can fix that. And so I was able, because I had those funds and that flexibility, to do this work. We didn't run at a profit for the first 11 years of the sanctuary, so my real estate business had to feed this nonprofit for the first 11 years. I didn't take a paycheck for the first 20 years of the sanctuary. So I know how difficult it can be to run a nonprofit, and don't think I would have had the talents to run one if I didn't have the real estate business to be able to carry me through those first lean years. So my advice to anyone who wants to take care of animals is do whatever it takes to build up a business of your own so that you can support yourself and support others, whether those others be your family, which in my case it was, and all of these animals, hundreds of animals that eat a lot of food. Thank you so much for letting me share my story. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to reading and seeing all of the other stories by other inspirational women. Bye.